How you feeling?
I'm good, man. Just ended the day, man. Started at 9 with my own therapy session. Just finished
Okay.
my last client at my 7 o'clock cancel, so I was kind of good with that. But
Yeah.
from like 11 till 7, so yeah, long day.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's what's up, man. That's what's up. I definitely appreciate you taking time out
no
to
problem.
come on here and have this conversation. I know we're gonna be talking about relationships, but especially discussing it from a male perspective, an informed male perspective, a therapist perspective. So,
Right.
I've realized more and more how needed it is to combat the narratives, especially about the black man,
Right.
and how we emote, how we enter relationships, and what have you.
Right.
So we just gonna hop right into it, man. I'm glad the Sixers not playing tonight, so I really ain't gotta, I ain't gotta rush. Where you from?
I'm in Maryland. Originally from New York, but I'm
Maryland.
in
Okay.
Maryland now. So
Okay. All right. Okay.
yeah.
All right. Cool. So just do the introduction. So peace. I am Philip Roundtree, and you're tuned into episode 26 of hashtag You Good Man. So in this episode, I'm joined by Paul Bache, right?
Yeah, Bashe, yep.
All right. You prefer Bache?
Either one. I had to go with Paul because my license is under Paul. So if you look
Yeah.
up Bashe Williams, you ain't gonna see that on my license. So, for our fellow clinicians, be like, is he real? Is he really licensed? You ain't gonna find Bashe.
Yeah.
So either one is good with me.
So when you're in the streets with it, it's Bache.
It depends on the relationship. It's
Okay.
close friends call me Bashe. Some call me Paul. It just depends on, it's always a mix.
Okay. All right. So I'll call you Bache.
All right, cool. That's
Cool.
That's
All right. So in this episode, I am joined by Paul Bache Williams. He's a fellow therapist, mental health advocate, and the author of Dear Future Wife, A Man's Guide and Women's Reference to Healthy Relationships. So once again, brother, I definitely appreciate you coming on. And reasoning is, especially the climate of where we are in today's society with social media, we have more. I don't want to say we have more insight into people's relationships, right? But we're looking through the mirror, right? We're looking through the glass, and we're able to see, we're able to critique. And, I think we're struggling to truly understand what's a healthy relationship versus an unhealthy relationship,
right.
Especially as men. So first, before we even delve into all that, just let me know a little bit about yourself. Let the people know a little bit about yourself.
All right. Well, like you said, I'm Paul Bashe Williams. I'm a licensed clinical social worker in Maryland, also licensed in D.C. I work with individuals. I work with couples. I work with kids, adults, groups, everything. My youngest is I think 5, and the oldest is 72. So I see a wide range of depression, anxiety, just adjustment, bipolar, anything you can name of, I work with. I also work in alternative school, working with young boys who are struggling with either addiction or they're dealing with in the juvenile system, just making bad choices, got caught up, they're on probation or whatever. So I go into alternative schools twice a week because I love working with that population, our young black men who are struggling, maybe not have the role model or the access to, different mental health support. So again, I'm in Maryland. I've been here since 6th grade. So originally from New York.
Okay.
But so I can't claim New York no more. My family in New York, my friends in New York can't claim it no more. So I'm
So you ditched the colorful do-rag. I know they like the two-tone do-rags in New York. You know what I mean?
Right.
All right. That's what's up. So my first question is, because I'm always intrigued by it, and I get asked it a lot. Why social work as a black man?
So it's funny because I did a podcast earlier and the same question came up. So as a black man, why social work? Because initially I had no desire to be in social work. But we grow up in neighborhoods, I guess the ghetto, impoverished, or whatever you want to call it. We grow up in those neighborhoods where we have people who are in positions as social workers, maybe not have the degree or licenses or whatever, but they're social workers because you have mentors or you have that uncle or you have that mechanic in the neighborhood that's kind of like help the young boy, go a certain way. But growing up in a neighborhood where there was a lot of violence, there was drugs and stuff going, living there, my mother was the property manager. So we moved there in 6th grade. So there was a social worker that came into our neighborhood and started these groups for the young kids. So I participated in the groups, but I was just a transplant. So I was sitting in the back, I had my hood on, and sitting back. I didn't want to interact with nobody. I didn't know anybody. Kind of felt on the outside because my mother was the manager. And I had to worry about that stuff. Like, does he think he's better than, it was just a whole bunch of different stuff.
Yeah, I got you.
Growing there. So, but at the end of the groups, the social worker used to ask me to always help facilitate, to kind of get me out of my shell. So I was like, all right, I'll do that. So I kind of liked it in a sense. And then I became a chaperone for different groups and stuff like that. But then when I looked up what social workers make at that time, I was ignorant to the fact that we're so diverse. I was like, I'm not doing social work. I'm not going to school for social work. They don't make no money, nothing like that. But he hit me to, and this is a white, redhead gay man now that came into our neighborhood. He was pretending like he was straight. He's still my mentor to this day, and I always get on him. But he was pretending like he was straight, but he also wanted us as young men in the neighborhood to be the social workers instead of him coming into the neighborhood and not having to face, not being able to relate. So he kind of pushed a few of us to go into the field. I was the only one who did it because I saw the potential in it. I saw the need. I saw how it helped me. So he was telling me at that time, I think I was maybe a freshman in college, and he was telling me that don't look at the salary because right now I'm making, I think he was making like 140, and that was like in 99 or 98 in private practice. So he's like, if you get your master's, you get this, I'm going to give you half of my practice. So that was like, all right, incentive. Let me change the narrative. Like, I wanted to be an attorney. Now I don't really want to be an attorney. I want to be a juvenile judge. I can somehow incorporate that later on. But right now, let me fall into this social work thing because I took a marriage and family class, and I love that. Okay. Friends, family, everybody came to me with their issues and stuff like that. So it was kind of natural, and I kind of fell into it. But I love it. So now, you got to go through the steps, of course, undergrad, grad, licensure again. And then here I am, my own private practice as a social worker, being able to run a clinic, being able to work in a hospital. I can have my own practice. I can do so many different things that maybe other professions can't. But I'm doing what I love, and I'm impacting. I'm giving back. I think I have this whole thing that I think a lot of us need to get into the field because it is an opportunity for us to get back to the neighborhood, to go back into the neighborhoods we grew up in where there wasn't any faces that looked like us that was helping us out. So now here we are, we can, and then we can make money on top of that. We just got to be smart and have access to it.
Well, no, that's definitely the key because when you first look at that social worker salary, you're like, wait, what? That's
right. I'm gonna owe more than I'm gonna initially start making. Right. I always say, like, if my daughter comes to me and says she wants to be a teacher or a social worker, I'm gonna try to advise her against it, right? Mm-hmm. Because it's this idea of, not because I don't think it's a noble profession, because clearly I'm a part of it, right? But you recognize all that it entails, right? The emotional vulnerability that we have to have as clinicians, that we're dealing with everyday trauma, right? Ultimately, it's weird. When I was in undergrad, one of my professors said, "Listen, you're working to put yourself out of business, essentially, right?" Wow. And it was just like, "Damn, I am." But based on how the world is, that'll never happen. We'll always be needed. Right. So that idea of representation, especially as Black men. Again, I never wanted to be a social worker. I actually wanted to be a teacher, which is equally. Especially as a male, as a Black man. I was having a conversation last night, and I was at a newspaper event, and they were talking about men in the helping professions. And so an aspect of masculinity and manhood that doesn't get looked at is the idea how we're pushed towards quote unquote money-making industries, right? So you'll see a lot of men who choose business. You'll see attorneys. You'll see engineers. And what you'll see is a lot of people who aren't invested in what it is that they do. Yeah, they make a lot of money, but you'll see them try to venture off and do some philanthropic work. Or you'll see the give back, and they'll be more fulfilled with that. So, thankfully, we woke up way before we needed to, right? In order to enter this field. So I'm always, I'm always thankful that I'm in this field,
Yeah.
because again, I recognize the value that we have. Social workers are definitely underappreciated, and as you mentioned, I always tell people don't go the psychology route, right? Because you limit yourself when you go certain routes. Especially when we talk about helping professions, you limit yourself. And the beauty about social work is you can work in child welfare, you can work in behavioral health, you can work in a hospital setting, which I've worked in all of these. Where if you have a psychology degree, you're typically limited to where you can potentially practice.
Right.
So yeah, so it's, social work is definitely a beautiful thing, and I'm glad you're a part of it. So your specialty, what would you say your specialty is when it comes to?
I guess depression, anxiety, and relationships.
Okay.
And depression, anxiety when it comes to depression more of our young boys. So a lot of times they're misdiagnosed with certain like oppositional defiant disorder when we're struggling to have breakfast. I'm angry because I didn't have any breakfast. I'm angry because of what happened last night at home. I'm angry because dad's not home. I'm angry because mom is yelling. I'm angry because I don't have a coat. Like different things like that. And I don't know who to talk to. Or I'm a young man and I'm not told to express how I feel. I'm told to hold it in, but I'm okay with being angry. Like I'm okay. Because I'm telling that's what boys do. Fight it out, tough it up, man up. You're telling the 2-year-old, the 5-year-old to man up. So my specialty is giving that space where we can kind of talk it out. Like let's express these emotions and understand that anger is okay, but what do we do with that anger?
No, I think that's critical. Me working with young boys, especially as a black male, we get thrown to black males, right? And I look at it as it's a beautiful thing, but then it's also like, damn, I might want to work with a young lady, a young girl, or what have you. But then we recognize, and I know, well, for me, I recognize that if I don't talk to these young brothers, then I don't know who's going to talk to them, right? Because these type of conversations aren't being had, and what you're saying is there's a disconnect that exists, especially within society, within schools, because again, they're assigning these diagnoses, oppositional defiant conduct disorder, when they don't recognize the trauma that a lot of these young boys have experienced. And when we think about trauma, a lot of times we say trauma to outside people. It's like car accidents. It's like somebody actually being shot, but they don't think of it as, well, I heard a gunshot, right? That's traumatic because that's not natural. And that's on the higher scale of traumatic events. There's certain things like missing a meal, right? Having to go to school to eat breakfast, to get there early enough to get breakfast, and then you get lunch, and that's the last time you're eating. That's traumatic.
Right.
And, many people don't recognize that and the importance of that. I always salute the young brothers. And I'll just salute anybody, because ultimately, to get to this day, we did the best that we could with what we had.
Yeah.
Right. So you being angry, you being frustrated, we can work on those things. But the fact that you made it, because at the end of the day, we're talking about survival for a lot of people and especially these young boys that we're working with. So, again, salute to you for that. So I know you mentioned relationships. So, I know you got the book, and we could definitely jump into that.
Yeah.
Because I putting it out, I had a lot of people hit me up like, what they're gonna be talking about, especially my women friends. Like, they're gonna let me know about men trash. I'm like, oh Lord, here we go with that. So just to, what is it about relationships that drew you in?
So I've always had this desire of what a relationship should look like, and that comes from maybe not seeing the perfect example of relationships, or maybe just wanting to have this idealistic of a couple getting it right, living happily ever after, fully functional, mom, dad, kids, family, house. But, in the neighborhoods we grew up in, we don't really see that too much. We grow up in dysfunction, and don't get me wrong, every relationship is dysfunctional to a certain extent. But we're dealing with high dysfunction. We're dealing with one-parent household. We're dealing with a young man not being able to express himself to his mom because mom expected him to be the dad or be the man of the house. So many different dynamics where there is cheating, or there's, you know, abuse, or all these things that we have to deal with that's in this pot of what we call relationships. And some people thinking that healthy is, or what they consider normal, what they experience is healthy, because if somebody's yelling at me, that means they really love me. If they didn't care, then they wouldn't do certain things to me. So the book comes from just my idea, and it started off from, and I always tell a story, it started off from me having this vision of when I went to college, the East Tennessee State, to play ball, and I said I was going to find my wife, I was going to graduate, I was going to get married, we was going to move, have this house, build this whole family, and that was my idea of going into college. Like, I was escaping home and doing that. So I get to college, and sophomore year, I get into this relationship, and I'm just bragging about my relationship. Like, my girl at the time, she was back at home in Maryland. I'm in Tennessee. Like, I was semi-popular, so I knew everybody because the fact that I'm just not from Tennessee, so I'm like a dude from up north who's dressed different, sounds different, so you get that attention. And I'm like, nah, I got a girl. Nah, I'm chilling. I got a girl. So, you know, that was attractive to other women. And so she's like, no, he's faithful. You know, he got that going on. Your girl is always back there. Like, that woman come in, but she won't never know. But I'll know. You know, if you came to my room, we had a 4-bedroom apartment. And I had 3 of my boys. We still great friends now. They were single. You know, they had people come to the room. We used to have parties. I used to be in the room on my phone with my girl. Like, nah, I'm chilling.
Oh, you was that boy.
Yeah, I was that dude.
It's funny you say that. Like, I got my son is my son is 19, right? My stepson, and he down at North Carolina A&T, and this is freshman year, and I tried to have a talk with him, but he a different type of kid, man. Like, he faithful. He talked to his girl regularly. She's still up here, and I'm just like, all right, right? Because how we're conditioned, especially as black men going to college, it's this idea that it's just a smorgasbord, right? That's for our taking, which is unhealthy when we think about it. Because in the midst of that, we're hurting people in the midst of trying to find ourselves. Right. So just you saying that, I just picture him, because that's how he is. What I mean? So good.
Right, and I tell the story to my close friends, but I don't, at this point, I'm just like, I'm out there, so I just tell it to everybody. But, my girl was back home, was one of my best friends, one of my roommates. He wanted a stripper for his birthday. So we chipped in and got him a stripper to come to our apartment, 4-bedroom apartment. I'm in the room with my girl the whole time, like on the phone, like they banging on the door, like, come out. Come on. I was like, nah, I'm on the phone with my girl. Like, that's it. And then I waited till she left, and I went out. She's like, oh, you soft? I was like, nah, we good. I mean, y'all had y'all fun. Y'all spent your money. But ultimately, that relationship ended. She came to the school, and that was a real shock for her. And I found out that she had all types of stuff going on with abuse and all that type of stuff, issues with her dad, and she cheated. And I was like, I was devastated. Wow. Yeah. And then, I found out so many different things. And, my friends, even back home, was like, we thought that if anybody can change her, you could. Like, they put that responsibility on me, knowing her history, which is what she's been through. Even her parents came to me, it was like, she's been through some stuff. So at that point, I had turned off all types of vulnerability or being emotionally connected to anyone. Like, there was no chance for any girl at that time. And I made it clear, like, I had to take some time off of school. That's how bad it hurt me. I took a semester off, and then I came back, and I was like, all right. I came back, and I saved up, bought me a new car. Like, I was brand new. Like, I was stunting, essentially, unemotionally connected, and I did not want to be vulnerable. Like, there was absolutely no chance until I got finished with school. So, but at that point, when I felt myself getting closer, I would purposely withdraw. And then I started writing.
It was sabotage.
Yeah. Yeah, self-sabotage. So I started writing from that point, and I said, "Dear future wife," because I knew I wasn't going to find it in college, because now everything around me was about everybody just hooking up, or, nothing is going serious. Nothing is serious. So I was just like, all right, that's my mind frame. Get my degree and get out. And then I'll find my wife, because it wasn't going to happen here in this environment. So that's when I first started writing, and that was back in 2000.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So during this process, were you aware that you were self-sabotaging relationships, in essence, your own happiness, walking around with the sense of, when we talk about an inability to be vulnerable, we're talking about a sense of shame.
Yeah.
Right. A sense, feelings of inadequacy.
Yeah.
So in the midst of this, were you cognizant of it?
Yeah, definitely. And that's the thing too, because I was always very self-aware. And, I had the conversations before, and then when the time got too close, I would have a conversation and say, yo, I can't do this. Like, I'm not ready for all this. And I knew what I was doing. Like, I knew that I did not want to be emotionally vulnerable. And I was like, yo, this is too close to me, to a relationship. I'm just here for college. And I knew when I spent time with myself, it was like, why am I even setting myself up for this? So when I saw somebody catching feelings, that's when I would pull off. Like, of course, we have the agreement now. We just hanging out. I'll be cool. But does that really happen? Especially at that age. I mean, it barely happens today. But, you're talking about 18, 19, 20, and you're talking about, now I can just, mess around and not catch emotions or catch feelings. That was unrealistic.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's interesting. Because especially as, being self-aware, and recognizing, this is what I'm experiencing, but conversely, it's like, I still want attention. I still want affection. And this is what I try to communicate, to women that I interact with, other brothers that I interact with. There's this idea that, in this cliche, do the work before you get people involved.
Right.
Right. But I think what that does is, that's just how realistic is that? Because especially if we have this, we're human, right? We're human beings. We have feelings. We have wants. We have desires. Right. And so at times it appears to clash, right? So, on one hand, I recognize I need to probably be by myself. But on the other hand, I really want somebody to talk to engage with. And I think with, some brothers, it's this idea, I can't be open and vulnerable with you because you're going to abandon me. And I'm really looking for a sense of belonging. Right. So maybe not saying what my true intentions are, not saying what I've experienced previously might just be better off. Because at the end of the day, whether we're talking about, young boys, young girls, just people in general, it's about we want to feel as safe as possible. Right. Because when we experience these emotions that make us uncomfortable, where we need to change, sometimes it's safer to just not feel the consequences of what change or what vulnerability might look like.
Right. And you talk about doing the work, and people say I did my work. Like at that time, as an immature young man, I feel like I did the work, and my work was just staying away from people. No, that wasn't really work. I just avoided people. Work. You know what I'm saying?
Exactly. And there's a big difference.
The work that I was doing was I wrote down exactly what I want to accomplish while I sat out of school. I wanted to get a car. I wanted to save up money. I want to have clothes, and I want to go back. That's what I thought the work was. And this time, I'm not going to allow anybody to stop me from doing that. And I think we get caught up in that, even today as grown men and grown women, that we think the work is just working on ourselves to look better instead of feel better, instead of deal and heal from our traumatic experiences, our relationship issues, our relationship with our parents, our relationship with our exes, our relationship with our, child's co-parent or whatever it is. Like, we have to do that internal work to say that I'm able to be vulnerable because I'm able to handle whatever comes my way when I express or show my vulnerability. If I'm rejected, then I can say, okay, I'm strong enough to handle that rejection. And I can just move on to something else instead of saying, like, I'm just going to be always in protection mode where nobody can get in, nobody can hurt me because I'm strong, I'm independent, I'm the alpha male, I'm the alpha female, and all these different things are really just cover-ups. And it's not, it's you know, it's the outer work, but we need to really be working on the inside.
No, listen, I completely agree. Because when I hear, you know, phrases like do the work, I'm like, you know, I don't even think that phrase does justice to what we're asking somebody to do.
Right.
Right. And so a lot of times it might be put out, and I see your post, so I know you explain more. It's not just I just put it out there. Right. When I put things, and I think that's just the clinician in us, because we could put it out, do the work, but we got to say how. Right. Otherwise, it's, you know, people are never going to truly understand what that means.
Right.
I know for me, man, listen, it took years. You know, it took my last breakup probably about 1.5 years ago, where that breakup, it was a very unhealthy relationship, and I ended up going to therapy for the first time in a few years. I ended up going back, but I was committed to self because I needed to see another version of me and where I was in that situation. And when I started to be honest with myself in other situations, I realized that, in my process, it's a journey. I look at life as war, right? War, there are casualties. We're going to hurt people. We're going to hurt people's feelings, right? Mm-hmm. Even if it's unintentional. But, you know, I just looked at, you know, how I was moving and what I was just lacking, that nobody else could give me, right? Nobody else could give me what it is that I was lacking, that sense of self-worth, you know, the self-doubt to quell those thoughts and what have you, just the depression and anxiety that comes along with being a Black man in general, but then also trying to navigate relationships because, you know, as you said earlier, you know, I didn't have the picture perfect model. I just happened to be a sensitive guy anyway, right? But that wasn't cool being around with the homies. So I learned how to dumb myself down because, again, I wanted to belong. And when we want to belong, sometimes we'll sacrifice self to belong and what we truly want and what we truly need. And so, again, it took me going to therapy to say, oh, damn, Phil. Yeah. I mean, we ain't talking about that. Not this week. I'm out. I'll see you next week. Because I couldn't deal with what I was being told. Right. And what I was hearing, even though I knew what was necessary. Mm-hmm. And, you know, I see a lot of brothers, you know, contrary to popular belief, it's a lot of brothers out here that want a healthy relationship. Yeah. Right. We want a healthy relationship, but we needed to come. Sometimes I feel like we needed to come under our terms, right? And then it makes a question: is that our relationship? So what is that a healthy relationship? Right. So you know, I was asking earlier. I was at a coffee shop, and I was asking for questions to be asked, and it was just like, well, can you? She's in school to be an MFT, and she was like, I don't know how to phrase it, but just the perception in relationships, like you're giving enough, right? Like I might think I'm giving enough, but in reality, I'm not. And we couldn't figure out how to really phrase it but ultimately it's about perspective and communication when we talk about, a healthy relationship.
Right. So I think, I deal with a lot of couples, and I think the question is, am I enough? So before you even say, am I giving enough, you ask yourself, am I enough in that relationship? So somebody that you're dealing with, you're in a relationship with, they're not going to be everything that you need and want. That's just not going to happen. And we come to these things, or we come to, like you said, you did your work and you realized that you were lacking something. You realized that you were trying to have this perfect relationship and you were expecting things and you wanted it on your own terms. Right. So is that a healthy relationship, or is that controlling your safety net? So that's the question. Am I enough myself? Where before you came, I was already enough. Now I'm just a compliment. I'm not completing you. I'm a compliment. So I always, again, when I'm working with couples, so I do the triangle. Here's the triangle, the relationship at the top. You have one person right here and another person right here. And you guys are meeting at the bottom. and everything you do is going towards that relationship. Do you want to get to that peak? Because that's what you're investing in. Everything that I do, does it create a healthy relationship, or does it bring down the relationship? So that's essentially what the question is. Am I enough? If I were to give you everything that I had right now as me and what's available, can you handle that? Is that enough for the relationship to survive?
Yeah, yeah. When you say the question of am I enough, especially when we talk about men, we're talking about operating from a place of shame. And right. So, especially as black men, and I think that's maybe why I'm always so critical. So I'm critical about a lot of shit, but I'm critical about how men are being approached, how men are being the perception, especially of black men, where we are today, as we have these amazing necessary movements like Me Too and Time's Up and what have you, where women are saying, listen, we're here, we exist, you need to listen, right? Which I completely understand. Conversely, I'm looking at it as, but are we listening? Based on your approach, can we listen, right? Can we hear from that? So, prime example, I was watching I watched the whole thing of Nikki Giovanni and James Baldwin, their interview, and how they were communicating with one another. And I thought they did a good job, and this was back in the early 80s.
Right.
I thought they did a good job of communicating. And she asked him, why don't you take off, why don't you put on the mask, essentially, that you do at work, right? Where you smile in front of the white man and what have you, you smiling in his face, and then you come home and I get the worst of you, right? Mm-hmm. And he's like, well, the reason I have to do that is because I have to pay the rent, right? And sitting there, being a therapist, of course, that's always the lens that we look at these conversations through. Right. I'm sitting here listening to her saying, yeah, baby, I understand that, but I need to know that I'm not a part of the problem, right? That I'm a part of the solution. And what he's saying is, this shit is difficult that I have to do, this smile, this mask that I have to continue to put on. And so, it went on to say, and I don't know, have you seen it?
I saw that particular part, and I had kind of like the same thoughts on that. It's just like, I'm going, you want me to go and be like I am at work when I'm pretending, and I am putting on a mask. I'm not showing my true self, but sometimes I got to come down off of that. So now, in retrospect, where we are today, this is what women are asking for. We're asking for those vulnerable moments. But from that message, it's like, no, I need you to put on the game face. I need you to do the same thing in a relationship. And yes, I can put on my game face, but I also need you to see my preparation face. I need you to see the part that I'm struggling face as well. And we can build and work on it together, because the same way that you come to me when you come home from work, when you come home from pretending, because you're fighting the world just as I am. So let's come home together and have a real healthy conversation, a real honest conversation, and say, hey, I'm struggling. I don't have to put my game face on. I don't have to put the, fake and facade in front of who I want to spend the rest of my life with, because is the relationship real if I'm always pretending?
Exactly. No, and that was really the gist of what he was saying. He was like, listen, I do that because the rent got to get paid. Right. And she's like, we'll figure out a way. And he's like, well, who's going to pay the rent? Right. You going to pay it? And she's like, you don't have to prostitute yourself. And then he responded, I don't want you prostituting yourself. Right. And so we're sitting here, and granted, they were talking, we have two intellectuals, but part of it, they were talking at each other. Yeah. Right. And not listening. And I think that exists, especially in this world where we are. And so, I think that we have to show men, even in the midst of the privilege that we have and the fuck shit that some of us engage in, we still have to show grace, right? We still have to be empathetic, because the path to enlightenment doesn't come through, shaming
Right.
us,
Right.
right?
Right.
You're not going to get shame. Shame might change behaviors, but it's not going to give you the desired result long term that you want.
Right.
Right. So I think it's something that, we have to be mindful of, especially, when we talk about the relationship dynamics between men and women.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, definitely. I mean, that whole shaming thing, I just posted something earlier. It was just like when you do that, and when you're calling somebody out of their name and you're pushing this thing on them, it's like it becomes that tattoo. So I walk around with that tattoo of what you just called me, and you say how I am, and I feel like every time you look at me, you're looking at my tattoo that you named me. So of course, the difference between shame and guilt, the shame is who I am, the guilt is what I do. So, let's talk about, I feel bad for what I did, but that's not who I am. So let's start there. So, I mean, you're absolutely right. I'm in full agreement with that.
Yeah. Before we keep moving, I want to answer. What's up, Kavana? Is it a healthy relationship life if you are always coming home giving your spouse the pinned up anger? I'm sure we both going to say no, it's not, right? But I'll let you expound upon that.
So no, I mean, what is the pinned up anger? Where does that come from? I think part of that is maybe processing that with your significant other. If it's a constant thing, then maybe you need to talk to a professional about that, how you deal with that anger, so that the things that you're experiencing outside don't particularly make you pinned up with anger. Like, can you process that stuff before you go home? And it's just a conversation, as opposed to you walk in the door all tense. You don't have the coping skills, coping mechanisms to kind of release that stuff before you come home in a healthy way, so you can have a healthy conversation about how tough the day was, or how bothered you, or what you dealt with.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. If one person doesn't know how to cope in an adaptive way, and one person is unhealthy, then the entire relationship is unhealthy.
Yeah.
Right? If one person is experiencing anger and they're taking it out when they get home, historically, we've had to find vices, right? Because we couldn't have the emotional conversation, so we find in liquor, we find in Sally, who I can get off with, or I'm finding James, who I can potentially get off with.
Right.
And we're finding all of these other vices to help us cope with what we're experiencing. And some people come home and just the anger, they just lash out at their spouse, because it's, again, you're supposed to love me, right? You're supposed to be in this for better or for worse. And so here I'm giving you the worst of
all
me.
The time.
And all the time, which is, it's completely unhealthy. So we definitely agree upon that. Let's see. So with that being said, we were talking about the Nikki and James conversation, and just where we are in social media and relationships. I think it's crazy where we are and all the comments that are being made. I was listening to Jerry Seinfeld on Wale album, and he was like, you give something people to talk about. People just love to talk, right? And so we have this with Offset and Cardi, where they say his behaviors, was, I hate the term toxic, but his behavior toxic, showing up at her job. And I think, or we're talking about Jordan Woods and the Kardashian and Tristan Kardashian, but I think what's happening is, we're so quick to comment on relationships that we aren't privy to, even if it's just the person that we know, right? We're so involved.
Yeah.
And I think that can make for a healthier relationship. So where do you stand as far as just like the promoting of relationships on social media, or offering 2 cents into others' relationships?
Yeah, it's so many different ways to talk about this. I think the issue is everybody gives access to their relationships. Everybody allows people to come in and comment because, relationship goals, or this looks good, let's take this picture together. I want everybody to celebrate because they get the high from people commenting or, you know, bigging up our relationship. Or when bad things happen, now we're still giving access. So like the Cardi situation and whatever happened, you know, with the toxic, you know, him showing up at work and all that type of stuff. And some of that is promotion. You know, that's part of, this is what I want to do to get her back. I'm letting the world know because the world knows that I messed up. So y'all need to know the work that I'm doing to get her back. So a lot of that stuff isn't real to me. And it's all about what it looks like. But I think when we really put our stuff out there, then we're giving other people access and giving other people insight on what's happening from what we want them to see. So I don't really comment on people's stuff because I don't know the backstory. So if it's somebody that I know personally, congratulations, that's what's up. Or, you know, somebody that just say, nice looking lady, good looking fella, you guys look good together, and I keep it there. Like, I'm not going to comment on people's personal things. If somebody comments and say, this is what happened, because I think it's just too much for me. And especially being a clinician, like, what do I look like giving some type of advice to somebody? They say, well, the therapist said this. And now you got to quote me, and it's like I'm a bad therapist because I told him this, and then it didn't work out. So I'm just not going to do stuff like that. But you know, it's all about giving access, and we have too many hands in our relationships. I'm all about, hey, celebrate it the way you want to, but we have to be cognizant that when we put it out there, that people are going to comment.
Yeah, no, I completely agree, and that's why, you know, I'm an advocate of, you know, the more I learn, I think I'm in my first healthy relationship ever in life right now, you know, and keep it real, is weird, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I'll be honest, it's some weird shit. Like,
like, you good?
Like, I remember
like you checking in when everything is fine. Like, you all right? Everything good? Like,
yeah, right? Like it'll be, I'm about to head here. Like, all right, man. Yeah, it's like, yo, it's sick. But I realize I'm doing a lot of deprogramming, right? From what I've seen on social media, from what I've experienced, to dealing with women who are unhealthy, have unhealthy situations in their personal lives, and two unhealthy people getting together.
Right.
And now we have these unhealthy, unrealistic expectations that need to take place. For example, you know, I tell this story often. You know, my first men's wellness group that I hold here in Philly, and we had a lot of brothers, you know, in the room. And so she wasn't my girl at the time. But, you know, it was a couple months dating. And, you know, I was getting ready to go to North Carolina to go speak at for a speaking engagement. And so I just said, hey, can you do me a favor and find me a hotel down there in Greensboro? She was like, all right, cool, I got you. You know, she was like, all right, yeah, I booked your hotel, right? My initial response was like, what you do that for? I got angry, right? I got angry, like, what you do that for? Like, I didn't ask you to do that. And then it was like I had to take a moment and say, what is it about me and trusting and allowing somebody to help me? Right? Especially as men, especially as men of color, there's a certain level of distrust that we're nurtured to have over time.
Right. And
so where we have to do all the doing, right? And we can't allow somebody to help us. I mean, now I'm at the point, hey, do whatever you want, sis. You know what I mean? I'm cool with it. But that was, you know, weird for me. I had to process that in therapy, to understand, you know, why didn't I value myself enough to allow somebody to help me?
Right.
And I think we're taking things like that into relationships with us.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, it's definitely a process, and that's good. You know, that's what therapy essentially is for. Like, we're thinking as Black men and just minorities in general, we think that we're going to therapy because we're crazy. We're thinking that we're going there because we got some deep-rooted stuff that nobody can really handle. In retrospect, some of that stuff is deep-rooted that we need to relearn or untrain ourselves and get out of these cycles, generational trauma, generational cycles that we've been doing, and has led to unhealthy relationship, unhealthy behavior. So it's kudos, man. I did the same thing. I had to go to therapy, and for several reasons. You know, starting my own private practice, being in an unhealthy relationship where I was doing everything I possibly could, and I was trying to serve family, serve relationships, serve the people, the clients. And I just, you know, one day I just almost just dropped. I was like, I have nothing left to give, and nothing. I was not receiving anything. So, and that's part of the process. Like I was in my office this morning with my therapist. So I see him every 2 weeks, and we had to I'm still working on things. And when it comes to family dynamics, dealing with, you know, the unhealthy sibling and dealing with, you know, relationships and all that type of stuff, it's still a process. And it's important that we continue to stay there. And like, we don't go to 2 sessions and be like, all right, thanks, doc, that's all I needed, I'm good. Like, there's other stuff that we can continue to work on and stay in therapy and do, like, I know I'm about to say do the work, but really being there and really understand who you are. And those things that you tell me, like, why were you angry that somebody was helping you? Where does that mistrust come from? It comes from being let down before. It comes from somebody telling you as a kid, don't let no woman do this for you because of blah, blah, blah. So you got to make sure you're the man. You got to do everything, and that's it. Like, we are taught so many horrible things growing up as men that it just leads us to positions of, I don't know, just I guess not trusting, not being vulnerable, not being accessible, emotionally unavailable. And then once we become emotionally available, now we don't know how to handle the response to it. So, I mean, we got to continue to work, man.
Yeah. No, I completely agree. I'm always reminded by Jennifer Lewis. She was on the Breakfast Club, and she was talking about how she started going to therapy, I think in like her late 20s or what have you. And I think she was diagnosed with bipolar.
Yeah.
And she was like, yo, I recognized that it took me 20 some odd years to get to this point, that it's going to take 17, 20, 30, 40 years to start working through this stuff. I recognize for me, self-doubt will always exist in my life, right? It's something that I'm going to continue to work on going forward. But the key is being aware and being cognizant of it when it's happening. So I can say, because of it, I'm better off than I was 2 years ago. And hopefully 2 years from now, I'll be better off and know how to deal with it a little bit more. Right. So with this question, because we did talk about, you know, getting to a place where they feel safe enough to be emotionally vulnerable. How can somebody get to that space? So I know one of the things we talked about is therapy, which is a great thing. But then when we talk about the practice of it, the application of it, then what? What do you say to that?
I think it goes back to trusting yourself. And again, trusting yourself that when you are emotionally vulnerable, whatever the response is, that I'm going to be okay. You know, that's the things that we learn in therapy. That, you know, when I'm rejected, it doesn't mean it's not really about me. It's about them just not accepting that. But it's okay, because at least I was able to share that. Because that's what depression looks like, when you're holding that stuff in, and now you don't have anywhere to let it go. You don't have anywhere to let it show. And then you're going back to the drinking. You're going back to the other substances abuse and all those different things. And now I'm sitting here and I'm stuck, and I can't be emotionally vulnerable because I gave somebody a chance. But now what? Now what? So I think when you get to the place where you say, I trust myself in this instance, I trust myself that whatever your response is, that I'm going to be okay.
Facts. Listen, I completely agree. You know, I often get asked, you know, especially when I wear the shirts that I wear, this is what depression look like. People ask me, are you happy? Right? And I'm like, you know, my goal is not to be happy, right? That's not my goal. What my goal is, I want to be able to experience every emotion, right? And know how to deal with it and appreciate every emotion that I had. So for the longest time, and a lot of us, we go through life emotionally neutral, right? And that's because it's easier for us. It's the safe route, and we'll always choose the safe route. You know, I had applied to NYU. I'm sure some people watching, they saw my email that I wrote. But that was one of the first times where I said, you know what? I want to get into this university. I'll be excited if I got in, instead of saying, yeah, it'll be what it's going to be. You know, if they want me, they'll have me. If not, it is what it is. Just playing it neutral. Because what that does is, when it comes, yeah, I might not be sad, right, if I get rejected. But conversely, I won't be happy, right? I won't be as happy as I can be because I'm playing it safe. And so when we're talking about, you know, being emotionally vulnerable, we have to show, again, I say it often, we have to show ourselves grace. We have to believe that we have the tools to deal with whatever emotion comes up. You know, I forget what movie it's from, but it's the line, players fuck up, right? Yeah, you might be emotionally vulnerable and somebody shits on you, right? I got rejected from NYU. I was sad. Right, and then I was angry. I was angry for a minute, right? But I knew how to deal with these emotions. So we have to, you know, just again, it starts with being confident with self, being confident with your skill set. That's not saying go be emotionally vulnerable with everybody. That's saying have the awareness to know with whom you can give information to. We don't give ourselves enough credit. I was reading in Brene Brown's book, and she was talking about how the idea of vulnerability, and it was just like, they was talking about something at a park and her friend knowing her grandparents' names, right? We're vulnerable every day when we give somebody our name. When we say, I'm Phil, I'm Bashe. Now, it's on a continuum. It's not the extreme, right? But we have to look at the other times where we are vulnerable and really build upon that. Getting up, walking outside, you're vulnerable, right? You're putting yourself in vulnerable situations, physically, mentally, emotionally, because you don't know what you're going to encounter, right? And so it's looking at it from, you know, we have to look at it from a strength perspective. You know, the cliche social work thing, the reason why, you know, people could talk trash about Trump, which I agree with, but I'm like, yo, but he got a strength. They're like, what's his strength? Well, he's able to connect with people, even if I don't agree with what they're talking about. You know what I mean? So we have to start looking at ourselves not from a deficit, right? It's like, yeah, I can be emotionally vulnerable. And if it's not received the way I want, then you know what? I'll deal with that going, you know, right then and there, going forward and being able to process it in a healthy way. So question. So about your book. So are we, because I haven't had the opportunity to read it as of yet, but I'm certain it's solution based, right? And different ways of how, you know, we can deal as single individuals and as couples. So what are some of the recommendations that is offered in the book, and just some that you offer in general?
So the book is, like you said, it's for singles, it's for couples, it's for married, divorce, whatever place you are in your life, it addresses that. So it's written in initially, I guess, letter form, and then there's the perspective, the clinical perspective of it, and then there's a reflection. So it's a workbook. So you see it, it's like, oh, that sounds good. Okay, this is what it meant. And then how can I apply that? Do I agree? Is that something that I've been through? Is that something that I experienced, and how would I approach the situation differently? It talks about vulnerability in there for men. It talks about what a healthy relationship looks like. It talks about relearning some of the different things as far as chivalry. It talks about the man saying, hey, this is what I need in a relationship. It covers a wide range of topics. Even sex, even the people who are sitting there waiting. And it's, you know, there's a community, I talk about there's a community of waiting, saying I'm being abstinent, I'm being celibate. But some people just do it just because they got hurt in that relationship. So I'm not having sex anymore because I got hurt. But was it the sex, or was it something deeper? Was it the lack of connection between the person you decided to have sex with? Was Sandy, was sex covering stuff? And if you guys didn't have sex, with the relationship last? So sex isn't was detrimental to the relationship. That was just an aspect of the relationship, but you guys emotionally connect. And did you see things that you needed to work on yourself? Did you see the things that you needed that them to provide for you, or the relationship to be a safe one? So there's so many different, again, aspects within relationships. Somebody asked the name of the book. It's let me get it real quick. I should have had it right beside me.
Yeah, go ahead. Go do your promo thing.
But it's Dear Future Wife, a Man's Guide and a Woman's Reference to Healthy Relationships. So again, it tackles so many different topics on there. Like why a wife is always first when it comes to people who are dealing with a co-parenting situation. There's a situation that it was popular. I wrote an article a couple of years ago about why a wife is always first. It was between the wife, the mother of your kids, your daughter, and I think the mom, or something like the dad's mom. And why the wife is first comes from all of that. And people really struggle with that. It's like, nah, my daughter's first, or nah, I have to wait on my child's mother, or nah, I need to listen to my mother and see what she has to say about this particular perspective. But once you enter into a marriage, your wife comes first. And that's the most important thing. That's the anchor right there. The kids, you take care of them. What the child's mother on the outside, she's not privy to a lot of information, and she can't dictate how you operate in the relationship. And then your mom is your mom, but she can't dictate how you operate in your relationship. So I just started writing from those different perspectives. Whatever I saw that was a hot topic online, I wrote in that. And also, you know, my experiences as well, and just the clinical perspective. So I have other clinicians who buy it and give it to their couples or use it in their practice. And people thought it was just like a book of love letters because it says Dear Future Wife, but it's way bigger than that. I've had people who said, I don't want to buy the book because I don't want to hear all this mushy stuff. And then immediately after they got it, it was like, yo, I'm in here working. Like, this is some real stuff. It brought up some things, what I need to change, what I need to aspire to, what I experienced before that didn't work, that did work. I'm in here, and I really need this book. So, I mean, that was my whole thing. It wasn't about selling dreams, in a sense. Like, I could have, you know, been a popular person that says, oh, I'm going to bring you roses and candy and all that type of stuff, create this fantasy. No, this is a workbook. It's written in a way that you can connect both men and women from a man's perspective, but more centered on with the man's work.
No, and I'm glad that's true. And in thinking, I think I've evolved to that over time, you know, because initially I might have, you know, early on in my daughter's life, my daughter's 10, you know, I would have said my daughter came first. Right now, granted, I'm not married, but I recognize, and when I you know, talk to married couples, I let them know, listen, first you have to worry about one another, right? First worry about self, then worry about one another. So what I was saying was, you know, we first have to take care of ourselves. And then if we're able to help one another, help improve the lives of our spouse, our children are going to be better off for it, right? So now I completely understand as to why that's necessary. So about the book, so where can people get it at?
They can get it on my website, which is BasheWilliams.com, and it's in the shop under Shop Bashe. You can get it there and there. If you buy it there, I can sign it and send it to you, or you can get it off Amazon. Amazon has it, Barnes & Noble. You can get it off of iBooks. You can get it off, I guess there's, the digital form and pretty much everywhere. But if you just Google it, you can find it.
Okay.
But again, if you want it signed, you can go to my website.
Yeah. So before we wrap up, does anybody have any questions, comments, concerns that they want to get off that we can, that we could potentially answer for you?
And thank you for all those who said they're going to buy it. I appreciate it. I'll definitely make sure you get it. If you buy it from me, I'll sign it. Like I said, you get it off Amazon. If you do, leave a review, please. I appreciate it. So,
yeah. What's the best place to get it though? So like the return on the investment is better and what have you?
To be honest, I haven't even looked at that part. The first one, I was just so excited about getting it done because I had put it off for a while. And I had a lot of pre-orders, so I've sold about 500 copies. So
that's what's up. That's what's up.
Yeah, and I really need to start the promotion thing and then do like some, book signings and stuff like that. But I mean, I don't mind signing it. So if you want it from me with a message, I'll do it. But Amazon is quicker. Amazon, of course, they have Amazon Prime and all that. So either one.
Yeah. They missed out on that. What inspired Bashe to write the book? Just briefly, just recap what brought you to write the book.
Just the desire to have healthy relationships, the desire to help, people around me. And it started from a place of reframing pain for me, or just to make paper. Again, paper wasn't rejecting, so I could write my feelings and write my perspective on relationships. And it started off a personal diary, which has turned into helping others.
Okay. And that's one of the reasons why, I have the podcast, that I have my men's wellness group, because I always say, women are winning right now, right? You can't get a reservation for brunch without it being 6, 7 women right there together. You're like, dang. But it's important that we have, in particular, these conversations about emotional vulnerability, emotional intelligence, and working through historical traumas or what have you. I was in a discussion last night about the barbershop, and I think the barbershop definitely had its place.
Right.
Now I think it's time that we evolve past the barbershop, because the barbershop is within the barbershop is as good as it is to have men express themselves. Some of the discussion within the barbershop is unhealthy and perpetuates some of the negative stereotypes that leads to unhealthy men, right? Who turn into having unhealthy relationships. So no, I definitely, appreciate, the thank yous for creating spaces like this. Again, I'm always thankful for brothers like you for coming on. I'll give it a couple more. Wait.
Definitely, and I definitely appreciate you. I'm gonna turn down Mr. TED Talk himself. That's
come on.
That's
that ain't good.
You a TED Talk like, I'm out here.
I'm gonna say thank you. I'm learning to take the gratitude. They ain't get me no bread off that yet, man. So, I'm still out here nickel and diming, borrowing money and all that. So I'm waiting for people to see the TED Talk. But what's interesting about it is, at first I got down on myself because I had about like 2,000 views. But then I went on there and saw Nikki Giovanni only got 20,000 views. I said, all right, I'm good. I can't sit and complain. We're talking about one of the greatest writers of all time, and has only 20K, when other people have millions, right? So it's just like, all right, cool. But no, I definitely appreciate it. I don't think I see any more questions. How do you encourage men into these spaces? Okay, that is a question. Go ahead. I'll let you start. You answer that.
I mean, that's a common question that comes up a lot. Like, personally, when women come up, how do I get my man to do this, to participate, to come to therapy, or to open up? And I think if we create the space for it, if we show other examples, you and I continue to have this conversation. We give access to those things, just like we were given access to those bad behaviors or bad scenarios, like the barbershop, when you tell somebody this is what they need to do to be a man. We need to have more conversations like this and more access to this, what it really is like to be a man, because being a man is human. Being a man is sharing all those different emotions of anger, hurt, all those things like fear, doubt, all that type of stuff. But what do we do with it? So the more and more we have the conversation and give access to it, and when he does open up to you, maybe sometimes both of us need to do a little bit of work to really understand what that means to be vulnerable, what that means to go into that space. And if he says, I want to go to therapy, don't take it personal. Say, okay, go to therapy, encourage that.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. I often look at it, what not to do, right? What you don't want to do is, you don't want to, I've said it so many times, and probably because I'm reading a lot of Burnett, I talk about the idea of shame, right?
Yeah.
Talking down to him. He's not going to go to a space to say, you know, you're messed up. You should go to this wellness group, or, you know, your thinking is effed up. You need to go to therapy. Some people might respond to that. But again, I just don't know if that's going to yield the results that we desire. One of the things I often talk about, especially when we talk about Black men, it's the idea, if we have an idea that we recognize Black men are distrusting by nature due to historical reasons and current reasons, then we need to gain trust. How do you gain trust? You be present. You listen, right? You build a relationship. You don't just demand, but you inquire. You try to learn more about the individual. You show up, right? You show up in the time, especially in the tough times, right? And show that you're there, and being consistent with saying, listen, you know what, I could potentially, you know, we can have this conversation about therapy in a way where it's not demeaning, it's not looked at as from a deficit. Again, that's on the individual, but and then ask to try and be a part of it. You know, I can, you know, listen, do you need help? You know, navigating it, because a lot of us do not know how to navigate it. I sat there for an hour talking with brothers about how to, you know, find a therapist. One brother said, yo, I called my insurance company. They sent me a list of 50 people. And I was just like, all right, never mind. I'm not meant to go. Right.
Yeah,
and I'm like, you know, because, and so it's other things that happen where we throw the baby out with the bathwater. We have that one experience. But again, if we want to encourage men to go to these safe spaces, we have to be empathetic. We have to show grace. We have to recognize that they might have experienced a lot. And what we're asking people to do is ultimately we're uproot them from their security blanket. Right. And we're pushing them out there. And so that's extremely difficult, what we ask people to do. And we have to be mindful of that. So again, I talk about, it took me, you know, they say, you know, studies say that it takes 10 years for somebody to get their mental health under quote unquote control. I suspect for Black men, it's a lot longer. But it took me 10 years to finally find a therapist. I went to one, nah. 5 years, 6 years later, went to another, nah. Then finally it was like, you know what, I owe this to myself, right? And maybe framing things about, you know, the benefits that come from it, and look at it from a healthy perspective, is how we can encourage somebody to and to potentially seek out these spaces. Some need to hear from other men. All we women could do is be supportive when they decide to go or open up about it, and that's very well true. That very well can be true. Do we want it to be that way? Go ahead.
Yeah, I think the other perspective too is that, you know, a lot of times, you know, women think that they can maybe help or fix that particular part. And sometimes that's not always your responsibility. Like, you have to understand that you might not be able to do that. So the encouragement of, hey, you might need some support because I can't handle that. And being a woman being vulnerable as well, or your partner or significant other being vulnerable as well, and say, I don't know what to do with that. So what can we do to help you through this process? Like, I don't need to be in your session, but it might help if you're in that session, you know, and, you know, providing the resources, because as men, we can't always depend on the woman to be our therapist, our lover, our wife, the mother, all those different things. You know, we have to be given the opportunity to say, I can't rely on her for this particular thing. Like, this is stuff that I had before we met. I'm glad that she's here, but I also need to be there in therapy and really addressing that stuff. And definitely, like you said, continue to have these spaces and these opportunities for us to really talk and be more visible. Like, we need to have weekly conversations. You know, we need to have daily posts and addressing the man and saying, yo, it's good. Yo, you good? Just like you said, you good? Like, let's talk. Let's rap. Like, I posted something on Facebook a year ago, and I said, I'm about to start some groups so men can just come and talk. And I was surprised at how many was like, yo, let me know. Like, in my DMs, let me know. Yo, we need that. You know, like I'm tired of this same cycle. This stuff ain't working no more. Everything I tried don't work. The drinking ain't working. The smoking, the abusing and using and all that other type of stuff is no longer working. So your group needs to be in every city. You know, it needs to be like offered by somebody 3 or 4 times a week. Like you good man all over the nation.
It does. You know, and not just, you know, that's why I always encourage brothers like, yo, I wish I had something here in Cleveland and Cali. Like, yo, start it. You know what I mean? Start it, and we could work on figuring out the logistics and all of that. You know what I mean? I'm always surprised, because, and I don't know if Rashawn's still on here. Rashawn was the reason why I started the men's wellness group, because what it started was me calling into his Wednesday line, and I was like, my friend Asia might be on here. I called in one time, I ain't say nothing, right? And I just was listening. So I was like, all right, I'll call back. And so I introduced myself, right? And we sitting there talking. It was me, him, and maybe 1 or 2 of his homies. And we sat there, talked for the hour. And I was like, yo, I hung up. And this was just maybe a year or 2 ago. I called my homegirl, because a lot of times, you know, us men, we confide in women, because, you know, that emotional connection is there. I was like, yo, I was giddy. I was like, yo, I was just on the phone with men, and we were just sitting here talking and having a conversation. And this me being a clinician for the last, 13, 14 years. And so that spawned me having my own line, which, you know, unfortunately time. But then it was just like, yo, this is still necessary, especially here in Philly, because Philly and just the Northeast in general is just a different beast when it comes to who we are in manhood and masculinity, where, you know, we not saying what's up to brothers and what have you. So it was just like, so Mark Lamont Hill owns the bookstore that I hold it at, you know, and I broached the idea with him. He was like, oh yeah, you know, email me. And I was like, all right. But then me showing up, me forming relationships, you know, with people that work there. So, you know, it was September, Suicide Prevention Awareness Week. And they were like, Phil, you know, hold the group. I held the group. You never know who's going to show up. I'm not holding an Eventbrite saying sign up. I had about 15, 16 brothers come in, from University of Penn professors to just the common young bull who just wanted to come and have some conversation. And I was shocked, right? Because I didn't hold this to a high regard to come out and have these conversations. And so, you know, they went in there and was like, yo, you got to have this again. And so that's what started the ball rolling on it. And what's the most interesting part about it is we have our regulars where we get like 3 or 4 regulars, but it's always like 10 more brothers who didn't know who come out. And so it's just like, it's such a beautiful and necessary thing, not only just what I do, but you being out here as a clinician, being a mental health advocate, because again, we talk about the importance of representation and what that means. And by us being vulnerable, I always say we give him permission. Yeah. Right? We give him permission. There was these 2 young bulls. I was in Delaware, in like a shady part of Delaware, going to Big Lots, looking for something in particular. And, you know, I went into Family Dollar to the store, and there was 2 young bulls. The one young bull was getting patted down. They was like, give me the stuff. He gave him the stuff, and he walked out. And so it's just like, I ain't come here for this. So I had to walk out and talk to the young bull and have an honest conversation with him. He was 15. His brother was 13. He was stealing. It was crazy. He was stealing toothpaste, and he was stealing something to help his teeth. He had like a cavity or something. And so it's like, it needs, right? Yeah. And I'm sitting there talking to him, and I started crying, right? I started crying. I'm standing outside crying, and it was just like, I have no problem with that, because he needs to see this. Yeah. And then I asked him, yo, when we were done after wrapping their heads off, can I give you a hug? Right? Yeah. Because I don't know if you're getting that. And I need you to see that it's all right to cry. It's all right to embrace your emotions and what have you. So, you know, again, I appreciate you and all the work that you do. I'm not sure if I saw any more questions. I ain't trying to take up your whole evening.
You're good, man. This is it's an important conversation, I think, and it's the same way I appreciate you too. Like we need to have the conversation. So I made myself available for this because I'm always willing to have this conversation and show face and saying that I'm a Black male clinician who's been through trauma, who's working, who's trying to give back, who's meeting the client, who looks like me, where they are. I had similar experiences working for child welfare. I had pretty much all the African-American males from 15 to 21 on my caseload, all over the state of Maryland. Like I'm driving back and forth, some in juvenile, some over here. And, just those long rides are just, let's just connect and being consistent, because they need that consistent ear. Exactly. They need that consistent voice that's not telling them they need to go out here and just go get it. Being that emotionally available male that's not, I guess what they say, corny or anything like that. And it's not even about that. It's about, yo, what's up? How you feeling? Like, not how you really feeling. Like, I could tell, like, if I was in that position, that would bother me. So let's talk about that, man. You don't have to hold that in. You don't have to be tough right here. You can be tough all out there, but let's be real right now. Like, how you really feeling?
Yeah, no, and no, that's completely true. And also, what I just recognized is that we're talking from a heteronormative perspective, right? And so when we talking about our our other brothers who have a different lifestyle than we might have, I'm just thinking about how even more difficult it is to come out to these spaces. Like, I laud those brothers who, like, because we have a lot of LGBTQ conversations within the group, because I think that's necessary. And I especially laud those brothers because, on top of, the racial, ethnic challenges, the quote unquote gender challenges that come, then we have this identity challenge that also comes. And I think that's part of the reason why, even though this Jesse shit is just wild, man, I don't know, what's up with Jesse. But I think that's why a lot of people are so frustrated. It's just like, yo, like, we talking about you a Black man, you talking about a Black gay man, right? And the struggles that come with that, right? And so the jeopardy that we're all put in, because we're all connected, and how, especially that particular population is just going to be distrusted even more. Right. And so, I just wanted to bring that up, because I don't want any of our brothers who identify in ways that we don't, when we talk about sexual orientation or gender neutral, what have you, I don't want them to feel like this conversation is just for heterosexual men. Nah, not at all. Absolutely it's not. We talk about healthy people and healthy relationships and things that we need to do in order to not only live in life, but to thrive.
Right. Yeah, I'm talking about Black male humans in general. That was the population. It was across the board. And I didn't feel any different, and I didn't make any of my clients who identify differently feel different as well. Like, we're having the same conversation. How are you feeling? I mean, you're different. You're dealing with a different level now. You're dealing with family acceptance. You're dealing with friend acceptance. Now you walk into a room and you're dealing with all that stuff too. And like, you're the outcast amongst the people who look like you. So how does that feel? Like, let's talk about that too. And this is a safe space for you to really talk about it. Let's work through that stuff.
Yeah. No doubt. So just my last question, because I'm trying to make that 10 o'clock game, basketball game. I need to decompress somehow. You know what? At first it was the Celtics and the Blazers. I don't know who won this. Oh no, never mind. The second game is Lakers Pelicans.
Oh yeah. That's my Lakers. That's my Lakers.
That's what we get into conversations about you being a fraud. You know what I mean? And so, because I'm trying to understand, you from New York, so you got the Knicks, then you in Maryland, so you got the Wizards / Bullets. You know what I mean? How you a Lakers fan?
So I'm an Eagles fan too. So I'm gonna break it down.
No.
So born in New York, we didn't have TV. We weren't watching what was going on. My father said he loved the Lakers. So it was like, all right, my dad loves the Lakers. The Lakers just so happened to be winning. They had Magic, my favorite player of all time. Then we got Kobe. Then we got Shaq. And, you know, that's how I became a Lakers fan, and I've been a loyalist. And as far as football, when I first started watching, it was only two teams that had black quarterbacks. It was the Houston Oilers and the Philadelphia Eagles, Randall Cunningham and Warren Moon. So I chose Randall Cunningham, and I said, that's my squad. And it was no reason back then to jump on the Philadelphia Eagles. We ain't had no chips for years. I mean, we had the, you know, the other chips, the 48, 49, and the 60, but there ain't no Super Bowl. Everybody comes out, you ain't got no Super Bowl. So I just stuck with my squad. Everybody knows me since the day I turned on TV and chose pick a team. It was between them two.
I hear you, man. Of course I could ride with the Eagles thing, clearly, because I'm from Philly and I'm an Eagles fan. I think the Lakers thing, because that's, you know, it needs some continuity in there somehow. You know, we taking applications for the Sixers. You know, if you want to give me an application, I could sponsor you.
I'm good. My sister went to Temple, so she
to
Temple. She played ball, and then Eddie was there with
Eddie Jones,
and all them was there. So just like, and then Kobe was in there hooping. I saw him play while he was there. Then he goes to the Lakers. Eddie is at the Lakers. So then Aaron eventually goes to the Lakers. So, you know, we family right now.
I guess, man. I'll let that slide. Hopefully they lose. Bron, one of my favorite players of all time, outside of AI. But I hope he missed the playoffs, because getting the AFC does nothing.
That does I didn't like Bron until he got there. So.
And you're a Bron hater.
I'm not
too much.
I'm not a hater. To me, now Bron, he's golden. He's on the Lakers. I don't like anybody. If you're not on the Lakers, I'm not rocking with you.
And he the second. He is the third, arguably second greatest player of all time outside of Will and Jordan. You can acknowledge that, right?
I don't know. I just, you know.
Your hate won't let you say it, man. I dig it. I dig
He's the best small forward to ever play the game. I mean, he's top 5. Like I think I still, you know, he's top 5. I give him that. He's better. Okay. He's better than Kobe.
That's all I need to hear you to say. That's enough for me. We on the same page again.
Right.
So Paul Bashe Williams, listen, man, I definitely appreciate you. Let the people know where they can reach you. If you want to say the name of the book again, where they can grab it and promote whatever it is that you want to promote.
I appreciate it. You can find me at Bashe Williams on everything. I have a blog that I still put up articles on there. It's BasheWilliams.com. That's BASHEA Williams.com. My private practice, which is in Maryland and DC, is Hearts in Mind Counseling. And you can find it at heartsandmindcounseling.com. A book, Dear Future Wife, A Man's Guide and Woman's Reference to a Healthy Relationship. It's on Amazon. It's also on my site, Shop Bashe. IG is Bashe Williams. Facebook is Bashe Williams. Twitter, LinkedIn is Paul Bashe Williams. There's more clinical stuff on there. So, yeah, you can find me everything Bashe Williams.
Okay, cool. And I am Phil_Quantify. Let's see, where can you find me? You can find me on Facebook.com/PhilipMSW. That's Philip with 2 L's. What school did you go to? That was
East Tennessee State.
East Tennessee State, okay. And you went there for bachelor's and master's?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. What else? You on my IG, Phil_Quantify. You can check out the YouTube channel where this video will be posted. And the channel is Quadify, QUADEFY LLC. This will also be available on iTunes, SoundCloud, and Google Play Music. And that is #YouGoodMan. The podcast will pop up. Also, I'm in the wellness coaching now, holistic wellness coaching. So we're talking about mental and emotional therapy. We're talking about fitness training. So you can find me on my website, www.quadifyllc.net. And you can find me on psychologytoday.com as Philip Roundtree, where, you know, I do offer virtual coaching. So I think that's everything. Feel free to grab some merch. This is what anxiety looks like, depression, Black Healing Matters. Shout out to Big. So no, I definitely appreciate everybody, man, for tuning in. Thank you.
Yeah. I do want to add, I'm also on YouTube, too. I have some videos on there when I talk about relationships. I answer a lot of questions on YouTube. I have some videos that I'm editing that I'm gonna put back up. My man, Talk to Mac. What's up, man? He's on here. But yeah, so YouTube, and I'm also on Psychology Today as well. YouTube is Bashe Williams.
Okay. Okay, cool, man. Listen, definitely be in contact.